She-Hulk is now streaming in its entirety on Disney Plus, and welcome to a newly reformed set. This is going to be something that I'm going to show more of as videos go on, but this is what the new background is going to look like. It's a little more colorful. There's clearly a lot more going on. But the show just aired, the final episode just came out earlier, and so I'm going to talk about the entire season in some detail. There are going to be spoilers in here, but I'm not going to get into the season finale spoilers just yet. I'll get to that later on. I'll give you a warning separately. First, we're going to talk about the first 8 episodes. In this show, we follow Jennifer Walters, played by Tatiana Maslany, who gains the powers of being a Hulk from Bruce Banner when they're in a car accident. As a result of that, she now has some stupid strength as well, but she comes with some different aspects as well, in that she's able to maintain her personality seamlessly, whereas Bruce and Hulk had a bit of a war for many, many years. But she also wants to keep up her practice as a lawyer, and eventually, when she gets hired to be a superhuman lawyer in order to represent superhuman clients, she eventually starts doing that, and it leads to a legal comedy, as the show describes itself, because every episode is pretty much its own isolated thing, even though there is a core storyline that's going on in the middle there somewhere, and there's also other stories that are being told in the process. Much like Deadpool, She-Hulk can break the fourth wall, and so constantly the show will have moments where it talks to you, the audience. If there's something that you wanted to see, they will make a note of it, like, you know, that thing you wanted to see? We totally get why you're excited, because you're going to see that thing. And it sort of speaks to the sentimentalities and thoughts of like fans, because you go on the internet, everyone's talking about it, like, we want this, we want that. And so the show constantly going into those avenues and making those things happen, it's what I think makes She-Hulk succeed in some places. But the show is also self-aware in how the response would be to something like She-Hulk, because a long time before the show came out, there were probably some people who were on the internet saying, a She-Hulk, what is all this? Like, you know, this is all some woke propaganda nonsense. And then the show makes note of this because it calls that out. Now, I think that's pretty interesting, and I think it's great because we're at a point where we're still doing that, and we probably should not do that, because She-Hulk as a character has existed in comics for a long time. This isn't some agenda nonsense. Like, I mean, this was there when Stan Lee was still with us. And so I appreciate the fact that the show manages to be that self-aware. Does that mean the show itself remains perfect throughout its entirety? No, it doesn't. There are definitely flaws, but the good stuff, when it works, really, really great. It has some growing pains though. It takes a while to get into the flow, but from the first moment on, the person who is in flow is Tatiana Maslany. She's a fantastic actress. I mean, I've seen Orphan Black, I've seen her in Stronger and other movies as well. She's great. This is something that I didn't doubt when I first saw that she was cast. She was going to do a really, really great job, and she does do a really, really great job. Also really good in this is her assistant, Ginger Gonzaga's character, Nikki. She's really, really great. In fact, if they ever decided to do something with her and Josh Segarra's Pug, who works at JLK&H, the superhuman law firm, there's some kind of a fun comedy in there. Speaking of comedy, in there for a spin-off, there is a character we get introduced to named Madison, who is really, really funny. Patty Guggenheim is hilarious. You get Benedict Wong as Wong again, which was a really great too. And this show also acts as a bit of a bridge between other MCU projects as well as The Incredible Hulk, because there are aspects of that that are revisited over here. For example, Emil Blonsky, Tim Roth, returns once again as the Abomination. We got that in Shang-Chi for a moment, but now you're seeing a lot more of that, so you're seeing the continuation of that play out too. It's very interesting, and it goes in some very fascinating directions, or it could, because they all go against what you might have known from a while back. And again, the show will constantly make references like if you thought it was like ruined or something, or it's not like it used to be, which sometimes self-awareness can ride that line of being way too self-aware, and then it also repeats the same mistakes. And that happens a lot when it comes to things that break the fourth wall. In that, She-Hulk does suffer from time to time, and like it critiques things that are happening, but it's also doing the same things, and so it ends up being somewhat of a little scatterbrained and messy at times. But most of the show still manages to maintain momentum. When it had the premise like told that it was going to be a legal comedy of sorts, something like a sitcom, I actually kind of understood what they were doing, because every sitcom has an individual structure. It's telling a story and an episode. And so I'm not surprised that for a while in the middle of the season, you just get throwaway filler episodes, which would not necessarily be filler, because when you look at it from a sitcom perspective, each episode's a different story. So it's not very strange to assume that in episode 6, all of a sudden, after a big tease that you're going to see a character like Daredevil, you get to episode 6, which is a wedding episode, where it's just Jen going to a wedding, and it's just a wedding episode. And then there's moments where she's just going on dates, like Tinder dates with guys, and she's trying to figure out exactly what they're into, which just happens to be the fact that they're more into She-Hulk than they are Jennifer Walters, which is kind of a crazy ass thing to think about, because have you seen Tatiana Maslany? Just putting that out there. The show itself, so in that sense, for the most part, does remain pretty impeccably written, though it does get scatterbrained and messy at times pretty often, and it doesn't always maintain the momentum that it should. But let's talk about another thing that's been brought up in terms of the She-Hulk conversations, and that is the CGI. Something that has been critiqued since the trailer, because she doesn't quite look right, something's off over there. Here's what I'll say about the CGI. It goes through so many meandering ranges of it looks good here to it does not look good here. And when you look at the reports that are coming in regarding, the messy scheduling regarding so many projects in the MCU coming out, and the CGI being messed up as a result of it, especially in some recent projects when people are starting to point it out more, She-Hulk feels like the culmination of that of sorts, because I'm hoping that from now on, and Marvel seems to have made a note of it because certain delays and stuff are happening, that they're going to take their time to make the rest of that happen. As it stands right now, the CGI that you get here is better than the trailers showed you, but it's still not impeccable. Like, you can still somewhat tell in a lot of sequences, and which is, it's a shame, really. But the motion capture work that Maslany has done comes through, although when they said it's a fully CGI'd character, then I was again confused. I was like, wait, so did you not use that motion capture stuff, or did you just make a whole other render, or a fully digital person? So what's going on over there? It gets a little confusing, but there's definitely things in that could be improved. The humor doesn't always land. There are definitely aspects of it that are not particularly great when it comes to the jokes and the laughs that the MCU is known for, but also the action sequences, they're not always great. There's a few really choppily edited ones, like there's one in episode 1 that was really, really bad with her and Titania, played by Jamila Jamil. So Titania, whatever. I'm sorry. It's like late in the night. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying my best over here. I will say though, seeing Charlie Cox as Daredevil once again was really, really cool. It was nice to see him come back as Matt Murdock, and the interactions that he has with Jen were really, really great. It is nice to see that they've brought back the Netflix version of it, because I feel like that was a fear a lot of people had. Like, are they going to bring him back, but is it going to be the same Daredevil that we know, or is it going to be a completely new version of him, but it's the same actor? Fret not, it's the Netflix version. It's just in a TV 14 landscape, but I gotta tell you, I think they pulled it off. I mean, I've talked to most people about this, and I think aside from like maybe a couple of people, everyone seems to be pretty happy with it. So I don't know, seems to work. Daredevil can make quips. He makes quips in his own show too, like from time to time. They're just darker humor because TVMA. So we'll see how Daredevil Born Again goes. we'll get to that when we get to that. All of this chugs along with a subplot that's also going on regarding the internet reaction that people had to She-Hulk, and so there's a whole parallel over there. But then you get to the season finale, which just aired, which is where I'm going to go into spoilers for the season finale. So here's your second warning. Here it comes. When you're talking about what the finale structure is, it seems to be going in a very similar direction like most Marvel projects. You see that this guy has got the blood from Jen because she was robbed that one night on a bad date, and then he becomes a Hulk. And then Titania shows up, and then Bruce Banner shows up as Hulk, and there's a fight happening. It's absolute chaos, and then suddenly she goes through the Disney Plus menu, crashes into what is the Marvel studio lot through an assembled panel. Then she goes to an office where the She-Hulk staff writers are. Then she's talking to Kevin. Then she goes to Kevin's office when you're thinking you're going to get a cameo from Kevin Feige. Turns out to be a robot AI, which is making all of the Marvel projects happen, and it's creating things in a certain way. And so the show suddenly is doing this meta commentary on the oversaturation of Marvel and the methods that it has. Like there's a point where Jen has to change and she says, can I change on camera? It's like, no, change away from camera. The visual effects artists cannot render that right now because they're working on another project. And you hear the beat from Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. So that's your tease for that. And there's constantly references dropped to next upcoming Marvel projects. Obviously, in a fourth wall breaking thing, this makes sense. And it's very clever. And it's really, really well done. And I thought that was actually one of the cleverest things that the show pulled off. You could probably look at it also and think, oh, well, that's real. People really are suffering at the moment. But it's the show handles it really, really cleverly, and it's like, we're not gonna do things like this. We're gonna do things another way. And you have Jen basically rewrite the entire finale in a way which makes things happen differently, and then eventually end with somewhat of a conclusion, although it sets up other things that are going to be probably super, super fascinating going down the line. So I'm fascinated by the world She-Hulk has created, the commentaries that it's done, the characters that it's brought up on us. Like, there are some really interesting ones. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing more of the, interactions with Nikki and Pug and obviously Madison, because the greatest character of the show is obviously Madison. It's two ends. But overall, it's not a perfect show by any means. It is a very flawed show. It's a show that could have used a lot of improvements at points, but Tatiana Maslany's charismatic performance, a lot of the energy that the show has at times, and it manages to keep it going as much as it can. But in the end, it is still a show that's solid, but not as great as it could potentially be at points. Although I did really like the finale, and as far as the flaws go, it was really well wrapped up, and it is very interesting, the notes that it leaves things on, and I'm excited to see what comes with this character. I'm gonna give She-Hulk Season 1 a B. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. Halloween Ends is tonight. Looking forward to that. Rings of Power ends tomorrow. I'm going to talk about that as well when it's done, even though my last episode review didn't exactly go super well in terms of likes and dislikes, but whatever, it's alright. As always, if you like this, guys, please do subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the movies.